The night was silent, except for the sound of the wind moving through the broken trees. On the far edge of the alien colony, a small wooden house stood alone. Inside lived a man who wanted nothing more than to be forgotten by the galaxy. His name had once carried weight in battles and in stories of survival, but now he was only a shadow of himself. He woke up every day, worked with his hands, and went to sleep with no dream of tomorrow. The war had taken his family. It had taken his future. All he wanted was peace, but peace never lasts for long. That night, the ground shook as thunder rolled across the dark sky. The man stepped outside, looking up at the strange twin moons that gave the land a pale glow. He thought the storm was coming closer, but then he saw something else. A tall figure was walking slowly toward his home. Her steps were heavy, but her posture was proud, like someone who carried no fear. The man narrowed his eyes. He knew this was no ordinary visitor. The figure stopped at his door and knocked once. The sound echoed through the quiet night. When he opened the door, his breath caught in his throat. Standing before him was an alien woman unlike any he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Her eyes glowed with deep silver fire, and her presence filled the small space like a storm pressing against the walls. She looked at him, unblinking, and said words that froze him where he stood. "I need strong offspring. You will be my husband." The man stared at her, his mind refusing to believe what he had heard. He had faced warlords, mercenaries, and death itself, but never had anyone walked into his life with such demand. His hand almost reached for the weapon at his side, but something in her gaze held him still. She was not threatening him. She was declaring something as if it were already decided. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackle of the storm outside. The man finally found his voice. "Why me?" he asked. His tone was rough, guarded, as if every word cost him something. The alien woman stepped closer, her tall form towering over him, but her voice was steady and calm. "Because you are human, because you are strong, and because I have chosen you." Her words shook him more than any weapon could. She spoke as if she had studied him, as if she knew the pain that weighed on his heart. He wanted to push her out, to slam the door and return to his lonely silence. But his instincts screamed at him. This woman was no ordinary widow. His mind raced. He had heard rumors of her kind. Fierce warriors, loyal but proud. When their mates died, tradition demanded they find another, not for love, but for survival of their bloodline. Yet she was not looking at her own people. She had come to him, a human exile who lived in the shadows. The man's heart beat faster. He did not want this. He had lost too much already. He wanted to shout at her, to tell her to leave him alone. But his voice betrayed him with a simple whisper. "I don't understand." Her eyes narrowed, as if measuring his soul. "You will." Lightning cracked across the sky, lighting up the land beyond his house. For just a moment, the man thought he saw shapes moving in the distant shadows, watching, waiting. He blinked, and they were gone. Or maybe the storm was playing tricks on his tired eyes. Still, a strange feeling crept over him. The widow's presence was not random. She had not chosen his house by chance. She had come for a reason. The man stepped back, giving her space, though every nerve in his body screamed that this was dangerous. "I don't even know your name," he muttered. Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "Names can come later. First, you must decide if you will stand with me or turn away." He felt the weight of her words press on his chest like a heavy stone. His instincts told him that his answer, whatever it was, would change the rest of his life. He looked at her again, at the fire in her silver eyes, at the strength in the way she carried herself. She was not asking. She was not begging. She was claiming. The storm outside grew louder. the wind rattling the walls of the house. The man clenched his fists, torn between slamming the door shut or stepping into a destiny he had never wanted. He knew one thing for certain. His quiet life was over, and whatever choice he made, there would be no turning back. The night passed slowly after her shocking words. The man sat in silence, staring at the alien widow who had entered his home as if it already belonged to her. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. He could not sleep, though his body begged for rest. Her presence was too strong, her demand too heavy. She sat across from him, calm and still, as if she had all the time in the galaxy to wait for his answer. Finally, when the silence became unbearable, he spoke. "You must explain." "Why me? Why now?" His voice was steady, but his heart beat fast. The widow raised her head. The light from the dying fire caught her silver eyes, making them glow with quiet fire. "My husband is dead," she said. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of a mountain. "He died in battle, protecting our people from the raiders who burned our skies. He was strong. He was loyal, but he is gone." The man said nothing. He knew loss. He knew the sharp blade of grief. Yet her voice held no tears. She spoke as a warrior, not as a broken soul. She continued, "Among my people, the widow of a warrior cannot remain alone. Our traditions demand we continue the bloodline. Our strength must not fade. Many have offered themselves to me. Many strong males want my hand, for my house is honored and my bloodline pure." Her tone darkened. "But I rejected them all." The man leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Then why come here? Why seek me, a human stranger who hides on the edge of your land?" Her lips curved in the smallest smile. "Because you are not like them. I have watched you. I have seen how you live with scars and silence. You work with strength but carry no pride. You fight no battles, yet I can feel the warrior in you. You are different, and it is difference I need." The man froze. She had been watching him, from the shadows, from afar. He remembered the strange feeling he had sometimes, as if unseen eyes studied him while he cut wood or worked the soil. He thought it was only his mind playing tricks. But now he knew it had been her. Anger sparked inside him. "You spied on me?" "I observed," she corrected calmly. "I had to be certain. Many men are strong in body, but weak in soul. Many shout of honor, but flee when true danger comes. You are quiet, but when danger touched this land, you did not run. I saw you stand against the beast that tore through the forest last winter. Alone, with only your blade, you fought. You bled, but you did not yield. I saw truth in you." The man's chest tightened. He remembered that night the beast with glowing fangs, the snow red with his blood. He had nearly died. He thought no one had seen, but she had. The widow leaned closer, her eyes piercing his. "I need strong offspring. My people face enemies greater than you know. Shadows gather beyond the mountains. Raiders test our borders. If our blood grows weak, we will fall. My husband is gone, but his legacy cannot end. I will not let it end. That is why I came to you." Her words filled the small room like thunder. The man felt trapped between anger, fear, and strange respect. She was not asking for love. She was asking for survival. She wanted strength, not comfort. She wanted him not as a man, but as a weapon, a legacy, a shield for her people. His fists clenched. "And what if I refuse?" Her voice did not shake. "Then I will leave. But danger will still come. You may think you can hide from it, but you cannot. The shadows I spoke of, they already watch this house. They know of me. They know of you." The man's blood ran cold. He remembered the shapes he thought he saw outside in the storm. They were not tricks of the light. They were real. They were enemies. The widow stood, tall and proud, her form blocking the firelight. You have one night, human. At dawn, give me your answer. Be my husband and stand with me. Or refuse and face what comes alone. She walked to the door, opened it, and looked back one last time. Her silver eyes shone like fire in the dark. Choose wisely. For your choice will echo beyond this night. The door closed behind her, leaving the man alone in silence. The fire burned low, the shadows danced, and his thoughts twisted like a storm inside his skull. He had lived to escape war, to bury his past. But now the past had found him again in the form of a widow with eyes of fire and a proposal that could change everything. The night stretched on, heavy and endless. And somewhere outside, unseen watchers waited in the dark. The man did not sleep that night. He sat by the fire, watching the flames die slowly until only glowing embers remained. The widow's words haunted him. At dawn, give me your answer. Her voice still echoed in his head like a command written into his bones. He tried to push it away. He told himself he had nothing to do with her, nothing to do with her people. He was human, alone, broken. His past was filled with blood, loss, and failure. He had sworn never to take up a weapon again, never to be pulled into wars or causes. He had come to this far edge of alien land for one reason: silence. And yet, silence was gone. He walked to the small window and looked outside. The storm had passed, but the night was heavy with fog. The forest beyond his house seemed alive, shifting with unseen movement. His hand pressed against the wood frame, his breath shallow. Were the shadows real? Had he truly seen eyes watching from the darkness? A cold thought entered his mind. If enemies were already near, then the widow's words were more than tradition. They were warning. As the hours dragged on, the man thought of his past. He remembered the woman he had once loved, the family he had once dreamed of, before war had burned it all away. He remembered the screams of the dying, the feel of blood on his hands, the weight of survival. He had lived through fire, but every victory felt like defeat. He had lost too much to ever imagine starting again. So why did her words stir something inside him? Why did the idea of standing beside her feel less like a curse and more like destiny? He clenched his fists. No, he whispered to himself. I won't be dragged into this. But even as he said it, he knew the choice was not so simple. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, pale and cold. The fog began to lift, but the forest still seemed to watch him. He stepped outside, the air sharp in his lungs. And there she was, waiting. The widow stood near the tree line, her tall form like a statue carved of steel and fire. She had not left during the night. She had kept watch, like a guardian, or perhaps a predator waiting for his answer. She turned her head as he approached. Her silver eyes caught the rising sun, glowing brighter than before. It is dawn, she said. Have you chosen? The man stopped a few steps away, his body tense. Why do you care if I agree? You said many of your kind want you. Why risk yourself on me? Her gaze did not waver. Because my kind are proud. Too proud. They fight with muscle, but not with mind. You are different. You are scarred, but you are clever. You survived when no one thought you would. That is the strength I seek. He felt his chest tighten. She spoke as if she saw through every wall he had built around himself. He hated it. He needed it. He shook his head. You ask me to give up the only peace I have. To stand in battles I don't want. To be something I swore never to be again. Her expression softened, just slightly. You think peace will stay with you if you hide. It will not. The shadows already circle your house. They know you. They know me. You are already in the storm, human. You cannot walk away from it. The man's heart pounded. His instincts told him she was right. The danger was not a choice, it was already here. He remembered the glint of eyes in the storm, the promise of enemies in the dark. If he refused her, he would not return to silence. He would only face death, alone. He wanted to scream at her, to push her away, to deny the truth she spoke. But then the sound came, a sharp crack of wood breaking in the distance. Both of them turned toward the forest. The fog shifted, and for a heartbeat, the man saw figures moving between the trees. Tall, armed, watching. The widow's hand moved to the weapon at her side. "They are here," she said calmly. "They were waiting for your answer too." The man's blood ran cold. His choice was no longer a quiet decision made by firelight. His choice was here, now demanded by enemies standing at his doorstep. The widow's voice cut through the air like steel. "Will you stand with me or die alone?" The man's heart raced. His past screamed at him to run, but his future waited in her silver eyes. He realized then that the true choice was not between peace and war. The true choice was between death without meaning, or life with a new purpose. And as the shadows drew closer, he knew he had only seconds to decide. The forest was no longer silent. The crack of branches echoed again, followed by the low hum of alien voices carried by the fog. The man's breath grew heavy as his hand instinctively reached for the old blade leaning against the wall of his house. He had sworn never to use it again, but promises meant little when death walked toward him. The widow stood tall beside him, calm as stone, though her silver eyes glowed brighter, sharp with focus. Her hand rested on the hilt of her weapon, a curved blade that seemed to hum with hidden energy. She did not look afraid. She looked ready. The man whispered harshly, "How many?" Her eyes flicked toward the tree line. 5, maybe more. Raider scouts sent ahead of their army. She tilted her head, listening carefully. "They do not expect resistance. They think you are prey." The man's grip tightened on his blade. He hated that she was right. Alone, he was prey. But with her, he wasn't so sure. The first shadow stepped from the fog. Tall, armored in dark metal, with a long spear that glowed faintly at the tip. Its face was hidden beneath a mask, but its posture screamed confidence. 2 more followed, then 2 more behind them. 5 in total, moving as a pack of hunters circling prey. The lead raider raised his spear and pointed at the widow. His voice was guttural, filled with disdain. "Widow, you shame your kind standing with a human. Come with us, and perhaps we will spare him." The man felt anger burn inside him. They spoke as if he were nothing, as if he were already dead. He opened his mouth to reply, but the widow spoke first, her voice clear and cutting. "You will not touch him." The raiders laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "Then you will die beside him." The attack came swift as lightning. The first raider lunged forward, spear thrusting toward the widow. She moved like water, sidestepping and cutting upward with her blade. Sparks lit the fog as steel met steel, the sound sharp and ringing. The man barely had time to raise his weapon before another raider charged at him. Instinct returned. His body remembered battles he wished to forget. He ducked beneath the swing of an axe, his blade flashing upward to cut across the raider's arm. The creature snarled, stumbling back, but another was already pressing forward. The man's muscles screamed with effort, but his mind was sharp, calculating every step, every breath. Beside him, the widow fought like a storm. Her blade sang with each strike, fast and deadly, her movements precise. She cut down one raider with a swift blow across the chest, then spun to deflect another's spear. The fog lit with the clash of weapons, the grunts of effort, the cries of pain, the the man's world shrank to the edge of his blade. He blocked, countered, struck. The memories of war rushed back, filling him with both fear and strange strength. For years he had buried this part of himself, but now it returned, raw and unyielding. He fought not for glory, not for honor, he fought to survive. One raider rushed him from the side. Too fast, too close. The man raised his blade, but he knew he was late. The spear tip aimed for his chest. Then she was there. The widow stepped between them, her blade slicing through the spear shaft with a flash of sparks. She shoved the broken weapon aside and cut the raider down in one strike. Her voice was sharp with command. Focus. Do not fall. The man growled, pushing forward with renewed strength. Together, they turned the tide. Their movements began to align awkward at first, then sharper, smoother, as if they were learning the rhythm of each other's fight. Her blade swept wide, his struck low. She blocked high, he countered low. For the first time, they were not strangers, they were partners. Blood stained the ground, fog thick with the smell of metal and sweat. One raider fled into the trees, wounded and snarling. Another fell silent at the widow's feet. The last tried to retreat, but the man struck fast, his blade cutting across its back before it vanished into the shadows. Silence returned, heavy and sharp. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the air. 5 raiders had come. 2 fled. 3 would never rise again. The man leaned on his blade, his chest heaving. His arms trembled with exhaustion, yet his eyes burned with life he had not felt in years. He looked at the widow, who stood tall, her blade dripping with blood. Her face calm, but her chest rising with heavy breaths. She turned to him, her silver eyes locking on his. "Now you see," she said quietly. "The shadows are real. They are here, and they will return in greater numbers." The man wiped blood from his face, his mind racing. He wanted to deny her, to claim this was just chance, just bad luck. But he knew better. This was only the beginning. The widow stepped closer, her voice low but strong. "You fought well. You fought as I knew you would. Tell me, human will, you still refuse me." The man's heart pounded. He could not answer. His silence was answer enough, but deep inside, he already knew the truth. His life of peace was gone, and the storm had only begun. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence felt heavier than the clash of blades. Fog curled low across the ground, wrapping around the bodies of the fallen raiders. The man leaned against the wall of his house, his blade still wet with blood, his body aching with exhaustion. He had not fought like this in years, yet every muscle remembered, every scar burned with a memory of war. The widow stood a few paces away, her tall form outlined by the faint light of dawn. Her silver eyes glowed softly, no longer sharp with battle, but watchful and calm. She wiped her blade clean, slid it back into its sheath, and turned toward him. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the quiet crackle of the fire inside the house and the distant cry of some wild creature in the forest. Finally, she broke the silence. "You fought well. Better than I hoped." The man gave a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "I fought because I had no choice. That's all I've ever done, fight when I'm forced." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "Yet you did not run. Many would have." Key met her eyes, his jaw tightening. "I told myself I left war behind. But tonight proved something I didn't want to admit. It never left me." His voice dropped lower. "It lives in me, whether I want it or not." The widow studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "That is why I chose you. Not because you are perfect, not because you are unbroken, but because you carry your scars with you, and still you stand." Her words struck deeper than he wanted. He turned away, staring at the fog-covered trees. He did not want her praise. He did not want her belief. And yet, a small part of him, the part he thought long dead, felt something stir. Respect, connection even. Belonging. When they returned inside, the man collapsed into the chair by the fire. His arms were heavy, his breaths ragged. He reached for a cloth to clean the blood from his hands. The widow followed, moving with grace even though she bore fresh wounds on her arm and shoulder. Her armor was dented, her skin scratched, but she carried herself as if pain meant nothing. Without asking, she took the cloth from his hand and began to clean the cut on his forehead. The man stiffened, unused to such closeness. "I can do it myself," he muttered. Her silver eyes softened, though her hands did not stop. "You do everything yourself. That is your weakness." His eyes narrowed. "And what do you know about my weaknesses?" Her voice lowered, quiet but firm. "Enough to know that no warrior stands alone forever. You survived alone because you had to, but now you don't have to." Her touch was careful, not rough. For the first time in years, the man felt something strange: care. He had forgotten what it meant for someone else to tend his wounds, to see him not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as a man who bled like anyone else. The silence between them shifted. It was no longer cold or heavy. It was fragile, alive. He looked at her closely for the first time, not as a warrior, not as a widow demanding his strength, but as a woman who had lost someone, who carried grief beneath her steel. Her eyes, though fierce, carried a shadow of loneliness. "You lost him," he said quietly. "Your husband." She paused, then nodded. "Yes, he died with honor. But honor cannot fill an empty home. Honor cannot raise the children I do not have." Her voice trembled just slightly before it hardened again. "I will not let his sacrifice end with silence. That is why I came to you. Not just for strength, but because I cannot walk alone any longer." The man swallowed hard. He had never expected to see her vulnerability. Her demand from last night now carried new weight. It was not just about survival. It was about something deeper. He felt the walls around his heart crack just a little. He wanted to deny her, to push her away, to cling to the silence he had built. But the silence now felt emptier than before. The widow leaned closer, her voice almost a whisper. "So, I ask you again, human, will you be my husband?" The firelight flickered across her face, casting shadows that made her look both fierce and fragile. The man's heart pounded. He wanted to answer. He wanted to refuse. But the words tangled in his throat. Before he could speak, a howl cut through the forest outside. Low, distant, but growing closer. Both of them turned their heads toward the sound. The widow's eyes narrowed. They will return. More than before, the man gripped his blade, his chest rising with sharp breath. His choice pressed down heavier than ever. Her hand rested briefly on his arm, steady and warm. "Decide soon, for we have little time." The fire crackled louder, the shadows stretched across the walls, and the man realized the truth. His life would never return to what it was. The bond had already begun, whether he admitted it or not. The next morning, the widow led the man from his small wooden home into the heart of her people's settlement. The air was tense, filled with the murmurs of voices and the heavy beat of drums that echoed between the stone towers. He walked beside her, his blade at his side, his body still sore from the night's battle. Every eye turned toward him, curious, hostile, or mocking. He felt them burn into his skin like fire. The settlement was alive with warriors, their armor glinting in the pale sun, their faces stern. Children whispered behind their mothers, pointing at the human stranger who dared to walk beside the widow of a war hero. Men spat on the ground as he passed, their contempt sharp as knives. To them, he was unworthy. To them, he was an outsider. The widow walked tall, ignoring the stares. Her silver eyes remained forward, cold and determined. She stopped only when they reached the great circle in the center of the settlement. Stone pillars surrounded the arena, their surfaces carved with the names of warriors who had fought and died with honor. The man looked around, uneasy. "What is this place?" he asked under his breath. "The trial," she replied. Her voice carried both pride and steel. "If you are to stand at my side, you must prove yourself before my people. They will not follow a human unless he shows his strength." His chest tightened. "I never asked to lead your people." Her eyes cut to him, sharp as a blade. "But they will never accept you if you do not face them. If you refuse, they will kill you. If you fight and fall, at least they will see you tried. If you fight and win." Her voice softened just slightly. "Then you will have their respect. And you will have me." The man's heart pounded. He had survived battles, wars, and enemies beyond number. But this felt different. This was not survival by chance. This was survival by choice. The crowd grew louder as a line of warriors entered the circle. 5 of them, chosen by the elders, each armed with weapons forged from steel and fire. They were taller than him, stronger. Their faces set with the hunger of men eager to crush an outsider. An elder stepped forward, his long robe flowing, his voice echoing across the circle. "This human claims the hand of our widow. Let him prove his worth. If he stands, he lives. If he falls, his bones will feed the ground." The man's jaw clenched. He did not speak, but he lifted his blade. Ready, the trial began. The first warrior charged, swinging a hammer heavy enough to shatter stone. The man dodged to the side, the hammer smashing into the ground with a thunderous crack. He struck fast, cutting across the warrior's arm. Blood spilled, but the warrior laughed. Pulling back to strike again, the second warrior joined, spear flashing toward the human's chest. The man twisted, blocking with his blade, sparks flying as steel clashed against steel. His body screamed with pain, but he pushed forward, striking low. Forcing the warrior back, the crowd roared with laughter and jeers. Too slow. Too weak. But the man did not break. He had fought worse odds. He had bled against stronger foes. Every scar on his body was proof of survival. And now, every strike he made was not just for himself, but for the widow watching from the edge of the circle. 3 more warriors pressed in, circling him like predators. Their blades flashed, their strikes relentless. The man ducked, blocked, rolled across the dirt, his blade cutting and parrying in desperate rhythm. His arms grew heavy, his breath ragged, but his eyes burned with fire. One warrior lunged too close. The man grabbed the spear shaft, yanked it forward, and slammed his blade into the warrior's chest. The crowd gasped as the fighter fell, silent. The widow's eyes glowed brighter. She did not cheer. She did not smile. But inside, her heart quickened. He was proving what she already knew. The remaining warriors grew cautious. They circled him slower, wary now. One by one, they struck hand. One by one, he met them with grit and stubborn strength. His movements were not as graceful as theirs, not as trained, but every strike was fueled by raw will. When the last warrior fell to his knees, disarmed and beaten, the circle fell silent. The man stood in the center, chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds, his blade heavy in his hand. But he still stood. The elder's voice boomed. "The human has endured. He has earned his place." The crowd erupted, some with anger, some with disbelief, some with reluctant respect. But no one could deny what they had seen. The outsider had survived the trial. The widow stepped into the circle, her tall form casting a shadow across the dirt. She looked down at him, silver eyes filled with something no one else could see: pride. "You are not one of us," she said softly, only for him to hear. "But you are mine. And that is enough." The man met her gaze, his chest still rising with heavy breaths. He did not answer, but he knew the truth. He had survived for himself before. Now, he had survived for her. The bond between them was no longer just words. It was written in blood, in scars, in survival. And yet, beyond the circle, far away in the shadows, enemies still gathered. The trial was only the beginning. The trial was over, but the echoes of battle still hung in the air. The crowd that had once jeered at the human now stood in uneasy silence. Some whispered in disbelief, others glared with hidden rage, but none could deny what they had seen. The outsider had survived. He had faced their chosen warriors and still stood on his feet. The widow stepped into the circle, her tall form commanding silence. The silver glow of her eyes swept over her people, daring them to deny what had just unfolded. Her voice carried across the stone arena, firm and unyielding. "He has proven his strength. By our law, by our honor, he has earned his place at my side." The crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in shouts of protest. Some raised their fists in support, others spat curses into the dirt. The elders looked at one another, uncertain. Their long traditions tested in a way they had not foreseen. The human stood at the widow's side, his chest heaving with exhaustion, his body aching with wounds. Yet his eyes were steady, his grip on his blade firm. He had expected rejection, scorn, perhaps even death. Instead, he found himself standing in the center of a storm axe scepted by some, hated by others, but impossible to ignore. One elder finally raised his staff, calling for silence. His voice was heavy with age and authority. "The trial is complete. By our law, he is worthy. If the widow accepts him, then so shall we. Tradition binds us." A ripple of disbelief ran through the crowd, but no one challenged the words. The law was clear. The man had passed. The widow turned to him then, her silver eyes softening. She stepped close enough that only he could hear. "Now you must speak human. Do you accept me? Do you stand as my husband?" The man's throat tightened. He thought of his past, of the silence he had clung to, of the ghosts that haunted him. He thought of the battle by his home, of the trial that had nearly broken him. And he thought of her strong, unyielding, but carrying loneliness behind her eyes. He lowered his blade, his voice quiet but firm. "I stand with you." Her expression did not change, but something in her gaze flickered relief, perhaps even hope. She turned back to her people, her voice rising like thunder. "Then hear me. From this day forward, he is my husband. Together we will stand against the darkness. Together we will build the future." The crowd roared again, this time with a mix of anger and reluctant acceptance. Some warriors bowed their heads, others turned away in fury. But none dared step forward to challenge her. The widow had chosen, and her word carried the weight of legacy and law. The man felt the weight of her hand rest briefly on his shoulder. The gesture was simple, but it carried more meaning than words. He was no longer alone. Whatever storm came next, they would face it together. But as the noise of the crowd filled the air, his eyes caught something beyond the stone pillars. Far on the horizon, dark shapes moved against the pale sky. Riders, raiders, not 5 this time, not scouts, but many an army gathering at the edge of the land. His chest tightened. The widow followed his gaze, and her jaw hardened. She whispered so only he could hear, "They are coming." Sooner than I thought. The man's grip tightened on his blade again. His trial had proven him to her people, but the true war was only beginning. The raiders who had killed her husband, the shadows that had haunted the forest, they were no longer distant threats. They were here, marching closer with every heartbeat. The widow's voice rose once more, cutting through the noise of the crowd. "Prepare yourselves. The raiders come. They will not find us weak. They will not find us broken. And they will not find us alone." She turned her gaze to the human at her side. "For the first time, they will face us together." The man stood tall, his chest still heaving, his body still aching, but his spirit alive in a way it had not been for years. He had entered this land as a shadow, a man running from war. Now he stood as a husband, a partner, a warrior once more. The drums of the settlement began to beat, deep and steady, a call to arms that shook the ground. Warriors gathered their weapons, children were rushed to safety, and elders spoke hurried prayers to the spirits of the fallen. The widow raised her blade high, its silver edge catching the light of the rising sun. The crowd, divided moments before, now roared as one, their voices shaking the air. The man looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, at the strength in her stance. And for the first time in years, he felt a strange thing burning in his chest. Not fear, not despair, but purpose. The raiders were coming. The storm was here, and he was no longer hiding from it. Together, they would face it. Together, they would make the galaxy remember the strength of both alien and human, and this was only the beginning.